Hello, got another quick little video on another gun of the Old West, less common and less known than the Colt Peacemaker or even the Remington 1875. This is the Smith and Wesson Model 3 Schofield Model 2. I'll explain all that in a minute. This is a top break revolver that was actually beat the Colt as far as design, because Smith and Wesson had the patent on the bored 3 cylinders, so they were making these before Colt was allowed to. But Colt ended up getting the Army contract, and Smith and Wesson did not in 1873. And then Major George Schofield, who was an artillery officer, a cavalry officer, wanted a gun that would be easier to unload and reload on horseback while moving, and he was a big fan of the Smith & Wesson Model 3. He made a couple improvements to it. Namely, the original had, I'll take this out of here, the brake part here was mounted to the barrel and had to be pushed up. His is mounted to the frame and goes back, and I'll show you that in a minute. So it can be done one-handed against your leg, and then it'll eject the rounds and you can reload it pretty quickly, much quicker than a Colt. The originals had a 7.5-inch barrel. This is not, obviously this is a 5.5-inch barrel, 5-inch barrel. So this is a replica. It's made by Uberti, and I've been trying to find the history of exactly why they made it this way. So obviously this is in 45 Colt. The original was not. The originals were made in 45 Schofield, which is shorter than a 45 Colt and also had a larger rim. Caused a lot of problems with cavalry getting the wrong ammunition. The Schofield round will work in a 45 Colt, but a 45 Colt will not work in this. Well, will not work in the original of this one. This has a 45 Colt cylinder, so this is 45 Colt will fit fine. But the originals would not. This is a lot more complicated gun than the Colt as well. The single action Army from Colt is a very simple, easy to take down, easy to clean, easy to get apart into all its little pieces, parts. There's not a lot going on in there. This is very much more complicated. And I'll roll in some footage of that. I took it apart and cleaned it real good, so I took some video while I did that. So I'll show you, but I just want to kind of go over some stuff and what I was able to find. When I found this one, I actually got a really stinking good deal on it, which I was surprised. But I did get it new. It has been in the shop apparently for quite a while, and it has some minor cosmetic dings on it. So it's got a little scratch there, cylinder ring. So it's been played with, but new. So I did not pay near what new was. It was actually more in line with what a used gun would be. Actually a little cheaper than some of the used ones I've seen on Arms List. So I feel like a pretty good deal, and I can live with the scratches. This one, it's marked with Schofield's patents, June 20th, 71 and April 22nd, 73, with the Maltese crosses on either side. And as best I can tell from my research, that's accurate and where it would have been. This would not have been here. It would have not had any markings according to what I've seen. They weren't marked caliber. On the other side, it just says Stoger, who imported it, Uberti, Italy. So there you go. What I thought was interesting, I wasn't quite sure about, because I thought maybe, again, this is new, but I thought maybe it wasn't for a minute, because this grip is a little lighter than this one. And wait, there's a cartouche there, and there's a cartouche there. I'm like, well, that's just weird. So did some digging, and I actually printed this off so I can make sure I don't get it wrong. This Uberti replica is of a Smith & Wesson Schofield second model revolver, manufactured in 1877, which is why it's marked there. And that was true. They did date their grips from the date of manufacture, with a cartouche on both grip panels and a U.S. property mark on the frame, which is right there, U.S. So that part is correct. All right, this cartouche is DAL, and it stands for Lieutenant David A. Lyle. He was the inspector, I guess the main inspector under the 1877. So there, that was him. And on the other side is stamped with a CW, stands for Charles Woodman, who was the sub-inspector. So these were stamped twice. There are no other arsenal markings on here that I can see that would have been on there on an original, the V crowns and things like that. So, you know, it's close. This wasn't market, of course, I don't know. This was in a shop, then really, he really didn't have to do a whole lot of marketing, period. But as far as I can tell, this is not the Wells Fargo, because that would have Wells Fargo stamped on it. There were other models with the 5-inch barrel that were issued, like some to the San Francisco police and a couple different other militias and stuff like that, that would have had these markings, but not necessarily any other ones. So, I don't know. It's a civilian-ish version of this gun, as best I can tell. So, it is a single action, so that has to go back a half cock and a full cock, and then it will fire. To open it, actually, you know what? I'm going to switch camera angles here. Hold on. All right, to open it, you go to half cock, and then you press the thumb release down, and the barrel opens. Now, you'll notice these little ejector pops up, and then goes away. So this ejects your spent rounds. So I brought some snap caps, and you just load them. You can load them 2 at a time. This is much faster to load instead of open the loading gate and 1 at a time, turn the cylinder, that kind of thing. So I got 6 because of snap caps. Snaps back, go to full cock, and pretty nice. Real quick, light trigger, easy to pull back the hammer. I like it. So, but to open it, you just snap it over. Well, these are heavy because they're snap caps, but if they were empties, it would shoot them out, and you could, or dump whatever's left over and then go ahead and reload. So this, like I was saying, this is a lot more complicated than a Colt. And I'm going to roll in some footage I had when I had it apart, just to kind of show you the inner workings of it. First of all, getting it apart's a bitch. There's a lot of pieces and a lot of little springs and a lot of little things that can go flying everywhere. So if you're going to take one of these, if you have one of these, you're going to take it apart to thoroughly clean it. I shoot black powder, so I'm going to be taking it apart and thoroughly cleaning it. Yeah, just be very careful with taking it apart and all the little springs and things that are in here that can go flying everywhere. All right, since I got this thing apart, I'm going to show you a little bit how this trigger mechanism works. It's a little bit more complicated than the Colt. So, let's see if I can do it this way. So, half cock. See, the hand moves up a little. So I'm not sure what that piece is called, but it unlocks from the hammer. And I'm not really sure what else it does other than that. And then, so you have your hammer spring, your main spring is hooked here. And then when you go back to full cock, okay, see your hands protruding, locks the cylinder, and then everything goes back. Anyway, since I had it apart, I just thought I'd show you that. All right, so that was the interior of the gun and how it works. This is all blue, and it's got some case harden on the latch area, on the hammer, and on the trigger guard, and the screw and this little spring mechanism that works the ejector, and everything else is just blue, and it's a dark blue. Pretty. I don't know how well it's going to last, but like I said, I've got some scratches on it already. I don't know, we'll see. Yeah, I like it. It's different. These are considerably more expensive. Even the Ubertis are more expensive than, say, their version of the Colt or the Remington or something like that. And I think the reason for that is it's a lot more complex of a firearm. It was way ahead of its time in the day. Am I surprised the Army didn't adopt it? No. they have their reasons. There were some anecdotal things you read about these things, that they're fragile, that they didn't hold up well under severe use. I know the Russians sure ordered a lot of them. They seem to like them a lot for their army. So I don't know if there's any truth to that or not. But needless to say, this gun, they didn't make a whole lot of them, maybe 5,000 or so. Most of them were sold off by the turn of the century, cut down, re-blued, reissued. A lot of them were nickeled and sold to places like Wells Fargo, different police departments, militias, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I like it. Thanks for watching.